Hello everyone, my name is Kira, and today I will be talking about the shockingly early leaks of Nefer. I will discuss her kit, teams, weapons, vertical investment, and overall value. Mind you, these are only 6.1 v1 leaks, meaning they are subject to change. So watch out for the pinned comment under this video for any major changes that happen to Nefer. But without much yap, let's hop right in. Her kit is very interesting, but it's actually simple compared to someone like Lama. Her normal attacks are, well, normal, but her elemental skill does AoE dendro damage and enters something called the shadow state, which if you have Vertindu, something generated by lunar blooms, if you've been keeping up with Lama's kit, it gives Nefer a special charge attack. The special charge attack summons a clone, and it does lunar bloom damage. Hold on a moment, I thought we were in Genshin Impact, not in Naruto doing some shadow clone jutsu stuff. But before we discuss her burst, I need to jump over to her passive really quickly, which it turns off bloom. Yeah, I'm not kidding folks. It transforms any lunar blooms or blooms into cores that don't explode and cannot trigger the sub-reactions Hyper Bloom and Burgeon. This is irrelevant to her burst because it does a good chunk of damage that gets further buffed up by a 40% for each special bloom she consumes. Maximum of 3, which is a whopping 120% damage buff to her burst. Wow. Just wow. Her kit seems wild, but as far as I understand it, she's meant to be an on-fielder who does a lot of blooms, leading up to one big nuke around her rotation, which is very interesting and I'm very curious to see how it will pan out in game. To speak on her teams, the first glaring thing is that she has anti-synergy with Nilou because she disables her blooms, which is something I will be discussing towards the end of the video, so watch out for that. The second thing is that she's obviously meant to synergize with Lama. You're definitely meant to pair them together and it's likely going to be one of the best teams in the game, at least for AoE. I don't have calculations on her best teams, but I would predict something like Nefer, Lama, Xingqiu, and then another Hydro. Not sure which one. Possibly Sijin for healing, we don't know. But we'll see when the calcs come to light. Again, refer to the pinned comment under the video. To briefly talk about her weapon options, obviously her signature is her best weapon. It has low base attack because she's an EM scaler, on top of giving a scary amount of crit damage. It increases crit rate on a blaze line. If a unit uses their skill, it buffs EM. If they do lunar blooms, it buffs crit damage. I don't think I need to say why it's good. As for alternatives options, there's a 4-star weapon coming in 6.1 that is a mini version of this. It gives a lot of crit damage and it buffs EM, which I do assume that will be the standard F2P option. Otherwise, any weapon that is a crit or EM stat stick should work just fine for her. There's also the event weapon in 6.0 which is good for her too, so her weapon options aren't lacking for F2Ps. We can't talk about her vertical investment without mentioning early constellations. Her first constellation simply buffs base bloom damage over elemental skill by 60% over elemental mastery. That sounds like a fairly typical C1 in my eyes. I'd rate it as fairly good, but not a game-breaking C1 like a lot of other ones, like as an example, Forina. Her C2 buffs literally everything in her kit and I am not joking. It increases the stack amount of the special bloom to 5, a further 80% increase to her burst. It also gives 2 free stacks of that special bloom as soon as you use the elemental skill. If you max out the 5 stacks of the special bloom, which you should be doing anyway, it gives a further 200 EM buff, which further feeds back into her C1. Yeah, those are good constellations and I don't think I need to say that much. Of course, I don't have the math to tell you exactly how good they are, but with my professional fields crafting certificate that I got officially from Hoyoverse, trust me, I can tell you that they'll buff her damage by a pretty good chunk, especially that C2. So, do I recommend that vertical investment? Not really. In general, no, because it applies to characters only that you like. But if you do like Nefer a lot and wanna vertically invest, these constellations are quite good and should be worth the pulls. And I do think her constellations are going to be better than the signature because she has a lot of good weapon options for free. Before moving on to the conclusions, I wanna briefly discuss Nefer versus Nilou, given that Nilou is literally getting a rerun tomorrow as I'm recording this, on top of Nefer releasing a little later and them having anti-synergy and stuff. I think the question of who's better isn't important. It'll likely be Nefer if you have a C0 or 0 Nilou, but it's more so about who you own. If you already own Nilou, getting Lama will be your first priority and that will be way more damage. If you own neither, getting Lama and then praying you get Nefer would work, but it's also risky. So it depends. Do you already own a Nilou? Get Lama, because that'll likely be the safer option and you'll still have a team core to clear endgame. If you don't own Nilou, then you can get Nefer, after getting Lama of course. In conclusion, Nefer is a really good DPS that synergizes with Lama and is another step of Hoyo's project to revive Bloom back into the meta, which makes me and the 5 other Dendro fans in this room happy. About her pull value, I've already discussed it in a previous section. It mostly depends on if you already own Nilou, because then she does lose value because of the anti-synergy, but if you don't, then her value rises because Lama would need an enabler to make the Bloom teams really work. They're not that good on their own. But overall, she is going to be the Dendro DPS moving forward, which sucks for me as an Al-Haytham main. but it is the truth. Meta-wise, she lasts longer because of how good her vertical investment is compared to Alhaitham's constellations, which I hope whoever makes them gets fired! I hope they have a good life. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah. I would recommend Nefer if you don't have DPS alternatives. Otherwise, simply getting Lauma does buff them up to be back at meta level and is more pull efficient. Now that I've talked about Nefer in great detail, what have you decided? Will you pull her or will you never pull her? Get it? I'll see myself out. If this video was entertaining or informative, please like and subscribe. I'm a small content creator and appreciate all of your support. Have a good day or night wherever you are, and bye.